Well, there's a few things that you have written about.
Yeah, and that's it. That's it.
Well, I'd love to hear about the role of fear, because you spoke about fear and exhilaration early on as about fully aliveness. And this part of your slow return, which you've rightly said is, and I really respect, it's more private than asking about someone's sex life. This deep, intimate encounter with the divine is not something to be trespassed upon.
Well, I don't have any visions or swoons or things of that kind.
You saw a painting of the Last Judgment. Would you tell us about that?
I did see that painting, yes. And sorry, what did you then say?
Could you tell us about that moment?
Well, it wasn't a moment. I had lunch, quite a vinous lunch in Beaune, which if you haven't been to it, you should go to. It's lovely French show at the centre of the Burgundy vineyards. And what I like doing most on holiday is having nice lunches and then going on to look at great works of art. And the great work of art in the Hôtel Dieu in Beaune is the Last Judgment painted by Roger van der Weyden, one of the Flemish masters. And I went along to see it in the spirit of artistic interest, because he was obviously a great painter, thinking, oh, not another Last Judgment, because I have seen, as anybody who's been in the great galleries of Europe, a lot of Last Judgments. But this particular one was different, because scampering about at the bottom of the picture, heading towards the pit of the damned, were quite a lot of actually naked people. Mm. And they looked very much, one of them looked quite like me. And others looked very much like the kind of people I lived and moved and had my being with. They did, because they were not clothed or otherwise different, as I think I say in the book, trapped under thick layers of time. They were people as I might have known them. And I thought, what if the idea of the Last Judgment isn't a medieval fantasy, and that it is actually a real thing that applies in the modern world? You don't see many modern Last Judgments, do you?
No.
You don't. In fact, they're quite unpopular even in the church. Did you know the York Minster has some of the best glass in England? It's almost an English Chartres, but there's a whole row of windows, some of the older windows, which are up at about the height of about 30, 35 feet. Mm. They're very hard to see. And these are pictures these are Last Judgment, Hell and Damnation pictures, windows, which were moved there, not in the 20th century, but in the Middle Ages, because people didn't like them much.
Yes. Yes,
it's the thing. Once the idea has taken root, maybe this thing is actually real, then I think it's worth considering.
I spent a lot of time on this section when you write about it, because you say something very beautiful. You say, maybe I should be ashamed to admit that fear played a role in this return or rediscovery. But the sense of your own sin, your sense of your own desire to avoid judgment was a real thing to you. And you rarely hear people saying that actually quite raw, expressing such a raw human thing.
Well, there you are. What can I say? It's there it is. That's what it was. But it was long after that I returned to the church. It wasn't some great.
You didn't fall on your knees and accept Jesus as your Lord and Saviour.
I did not fall on my knees. No. I continued my tour of the vineyards of Burgundy. Very nice they are too.
Yes.
Another of the works of God in some ways.
Yes.
The making of wine, but there you are.
I think the dots I'm trying to join is that you said at the beginning about coming to the conclusion that lots of people who are trying to reform the world should instead be reforming themselves.
Oh, completely. But that starts with me.
Yes. And also now when you write, you're often talking about sort of grand utopian social justice projects as of less importance or less interest or even dangerous compared to this kind of minute, practical, everyday focus on our own character.
They're two different things. You shouldn't, the problem with the revolutionary worldview and its allies, and there are many revolutionary worldviews which don't actually involve anyone climbing onto barricades in one of those French paintings with bayonets and women with their breasts showing. You don't need to have all that to have a revolution. A revolution can be conducted by changing the way that things are taught in schools, or who runs the television studio. It's those are the revolutions. Anybody who wants to revolutionize society has almost certainly gone beyond the limits of where they should be going.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is they're attempting to alter the lives of other people to conform with what they want.
Yeah.
Because they think that those people would benefit from the disciplines which they want to impose on them. And ultimately this leads to all kinds of horrible things. Don't do that would be my profound lesson. It will never end well. But it's separate from the question of whether you can make society better in your own lifetime by practical actions and intelligent policies, or much more important than the current world, whether you can stop it getting any worse by preventing people from making it worse.